My girlfriend and I had been dating the past 5 years, since college. After graduation, we were semi-long distance, living close enough that we alternately visited almost every weekend. In 2018, and got a job in my city, and we found a place and moved in together. Now's a good time to mention the security cameras in our house. Break-ins are unfortunately common where we live. We thus got some motion-activated cameras, one of which has a view of our kitchen, to monitor the back door. The cameras only record when there's motion so they can retain footage for a very long time. And of course knows this. About a year ago, and started complaining I wasn't contributing equally to chores. I've been obsessive about chores my whole life. Growing up, not doing the dishes meant no video games for a week. When I lived with roommates, I was always the chore Nazi, making damn sure we all stuck to our chore wheel. And is just as fastidious about chores, so we just naturally alternated who did what. I'd just been brushing her remarks off, but over the last few months they've become much more aggressive. E.g. I was vacuuming and said, "Look at you finally cleaning up around here." I replied that we alternated vacuuming, to which she retorted, "No, you've vacuumed maybe twice since I moved in." Exchanges like this have been happening so frequently that I began to doubt my own recollection. Am I not as clean as I thought? Finally, she exploded at me last week. She said that having to stay home constantly over the past weeks exposed how little I do around the house, and that she didn't move in just to be my maid. Questioning my own sanity, I spent a few hours going through the entire 1.5-year archive of security camera footage, and tallied the exact number of times the kitchen cam caught each of us doing dishes. Our cleaning supplies, vacuum, mop, etc., are in the kitchen pantry, so I also tallied up how many times we grabbed cleaning stuff. To my vindication, the tally showed that we indeed split chores equally. She vacuumed / mopped 5 more times than I did. I did dishes 20 more times than she did. Given that we vacuum / mop at least once a week and do dishes at least every day, these are insignificant differences over the year and a half we've lived together. When I confronted Anne, she shrugged off her behavior as remembering things differently, but the real sin here was what I did, which she called an unforgivable violation of her privacy, akin to abusive stalking. She has broken up with me and is trying to move out, although obviously this is difficult due to current circumstances. I'm totally heartbroken, and was the love of my life, and I can't believe she destroyed our relationship like this. To make matters worse, she told many of our friends, who are mostly siding with her. They've been texting me that what I did was creepy, abusive, controlling, invasive, etc. I'm at a loss. I'm beginning to think I'm the one who's off base here. I want to start by saying that I don't have the best relationship with my mom. I have an older sister, and growing up my mom always tended to control me, and tried to override any decisions I make, saying that I was young and naive and she always knew better. I cut contact with her for a few months after she tried to get involved in my marriage. My husband and I been together for 3 years, and he has always been telling me to be more gentle with my mom. I had a miscarriage a few days ago. It's devastating, and I really thought it'll get easier, but I'm still feeling excruciating pain and frustration. We were happy and excited, but all that disappeared suddenly, and it was hard for me to take because I thought everything was fine. I didn't tell anyone, especially since I'm currently dealing with some health issues. I didn't tell anyone in the family. My husband promised not to tell until I'm ready. My mom kept asking me questions and brought up my pregnancy constantly, and my answers were short, because I didn't want her to know, since she'd call everybody and let them know. She's always like this, that's why I tend to keep things private. I decided to not visit for a couple of days, hoping she'd stop asking questions. Then I found out on FB that my mom announced my miscarriage on her page, and I didn't know about that. I was shocked. I freaked out when I started getting calls from family members, and I have no idea how many people knew about it. I was so mad to the point of shaking. Everyone kept berating me for not telling them. I called my mom and I yelled at her. She defended herself, saying that she was just looking for support and that I should have told her about it first time she asked what was wrong. I asked her who told her, and she said she had a talk with my doctor, but I shouldn't be mad because she's my mom and she had the right to know what's going on. I argued with her about getting involved in my personal life and disregarding my feelings and cutting me off guard like that. I went to the doctor and I lashed out at her for releasing my private medical information to my mom, and causing me to deal with everyone asking why I was hiding my miscarriage from them even though I was just waiting for the right time. I told my doctor that I was going to file a complaint against her the same day since she didn't respect my privacy, and decided to give my mom information about my medical records. My mom heard and started berating me, saying it wasn't the doctor's fault and that she was a friend of hers she knew years ago, but I didn't know about it. She said that I went too far and acted like my family were strangers. She said that she's my mom and I didn't need to overreact like that. All I needed was time and space. Now I have to deal with all this stress and I'm a mess right now. My brother texted me a few minutes ago and said he wants to come over and talk to me. He was the first to call me and berated me and said that I was being hostile towards everyone for no reason. I haven't replied to his text yet, but I don't want to see anyone right now. I can't take one more word from them. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem, and though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action. Seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year. Most everything is great except one thing. If I tell her I'm sick / not feeling well / hurt, she refuses to believe me. If I have a cold, she tells me I'm faking it until it goes away and then says, "See, you are fine." I'm rarely sick, so it's never been a major issue. But she has zero sympathy when I'm sick. She grew up with hypochondriac parents who were always sick with something, often self-diagnosing themselves with fatal maladies. She has limited contact with them, and the time I met them, I was told by them that they didn't have long left to live. I get it, growing up in that household must have been awful. But what happened on Sunday just sent me over the edge. Girlfriend and my sister wanted to check out this event and we were all supposed to go. I woke up with excruciating back pain and could barely breathe. Girlfriend got so mad at me for ruining this that she wouldn't speak to me. As she was about to leave, I asked her not to leave because I thought something was wrong. She said no and left. I threw up in my bed and eventually called my parents. I was too embarrassed to call 911. And my mother and brother hauled me to the hospital. I was whisked back, and after 20 minutes I was diagnosed with kidney stones, fentanyl and gravel, and I had a CT scan and then went for a procedure to bust the kidney stones. 5 hours later and I was laying on my parents' sofa in a haze. I have never, and hope to never, feel pain like that again in my life. I was sure I was going to die. The attending in the Told me it's worse than childbirth and that they've had it before, too. I didn't text my girlfriend throughout because I really didn't have the strength or foresight. I was drugged up and uncomfortable. My sister found out that I had been in the emergency room and soon after my girlfriend called me. She was pissed off I didn't call her. Then I reminded her that I begged her not to leave as I thought something was wrong. She got quiet and eked out an apology. I got furious and said something rather nasty things, unsavory things. In fairness, I was on dope, still sore, peeing blood and felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Standing was incredibly painful. I needed to take 2 days off of work and school. I rested in bed and the only thing you can think is the person who should have been there didn't even believe me. She's texted me this week a formal apology and wants one in return for saying nasty things to her. I've been avoiding her texts / calls. I've felt like shit this week and picked something up in the So I laid low, took a few days off work and relaxed. She wants to meet tonight and talk about everything, but I'm still so mad I don't know if I should hold off seeing her. Is this as big a transgression as I feel like it is? Am I blowing this out of proportion because I felt so shitty? I just am so annoyed and angry. Girlfriend didn't believe me something was wrong and I wound up in the with kidney stones and needed a procedure. She was mad that I didn't call her, I was too doped up, and then when I blew up at her she felt bad. I'm still mad at her.